We know that the President of United States of America has way more power than that of India, because President is sort of an equivalent of Indian Prime Minister rather. However, President of USA also have a very concentrated individual power wherein he, she or they can do anything that they would want to do, of course within the boundaries of the law. But recently what has happened is there has been certain judgments by the Supreme Court of the United States of America, and that judgments have seemingly given exceptional powers to the present president of the United States, or the president of the United States of America, probably making the president of USA the strongest president of USA ever. So now in this video, let us understand as to what are these judgments, why do they make Donald Trump the most powerful USA president ever, and is it within the bounds of the law, or what is the debate against it. So let's get started with respect to the news. So the news is about the judgment given on 29th of June 2026 by the US Supreme Court. Now they have basically delivered multiple landmark rulings concerning the present president Donald Trump. One of the ruling has actually come against him as well, but majority of them, an important power related with respect to the power, it has been in his favor. Let us see what they are. So by the judgments, the court has expanded the presidential authority, right? However, it has refused one of Donald Trump's attempt to remove a Federal Reserve governor. That it did not allow. It upheld the counting of certain mail-in ballots. In USA, you can also vote via mailing in your vote. So that counting of that is allowed. And however, it has declined. This can impact Donald Trump. It has declined the review of the Eon Carroll judgment against Donald Trump, wherein he was required to pay $5 million. He will continue to require to pay that much amount. Now, let us understand with respect to the most important thing that is coming out of the judgment, that is the expansion of the presidential power. Now, the judgment that has come out yesterday on 29th June basically is overruling 91 years of a precedent. And that judgment, court ruling, has been 6-3. 9-judge bench was there, 6 in favor of this ruling which came, and 3 against it. So what is this ruling? The court upheld that President Trump's removal of Federal Trade Commission's commissioner Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. So it upheld. Basically, Trump have unilaterally removed her. The Supreme Court, in the Supreme Court, the case was pending. Now the Supreme Court is saying, okay, it's all right. The president can remove. That's not a problem. However, till now that was a problem, because 91 years ago there was a judgment which did not allow USA president to remove the Federal Trade Commission's commissioner, but now it has overturned that judgment. Now, so basically the 1935 judgment has been overturned, which actually restricted presidential power. So now the power of the president has basically been expanded. Further, the Chief Justice John Robert gave reasoning. So he is the Chief Justice who was on the bench as well. He gave his reasoning saying that protection from presidential removal is contrary to the constitutional principle of separation of power. If the president cannot remove, he's saying, then separation of power will not be there. In order to ensure the separation of power, there needs to be a power given to the USA president to remove the commissioner. Second, officials exercising the presidential authority must remain accountable to the president. So these officials should be accountable to the president. What about the president? The president will be accountable to the people, is what the Chief Justice of USA has basically said. Moving ahead, let us understand the constitutional debate with respect to these judgments. First thing, we will see the majority view, and then we will look at the dissenting view. Now, the majority view says that independent agency officials which are exercising executive authority should remain under presidential control. So the president should be able to control the executive authorities or heads, because the idea is that's how the president can function and govern, or there can be huge amount of friction which will be counter to the smooth functioning of the government, is what they are saying, because otherwise they cannot effectively work. Now let us look at the dissenting opinion. So the dissenting opinion was that the ruling overturns the majority view. The dissenting opinion is saying is that the majority view overturns a settled constitutional principle, the principle which was settled previously and confirmed by the Supreme Court in 1935, that is 91 years ago, that is getting overturned. And the dissenting opinion said that it shifts the constitutional structure towards unitary executive control, a single executive control under the president is what is going to happen. However, when it came to the Federal Reserve's governor, the Supreme Court has an exception. It said that with a majority of 5:4, again these 9-judge bench only, the same bench had gave multiple decisions. So here it is 5:4, wherein the bench has said that when Donald Trump basically he attempted to remove the Federal Reserve's governor Lisa Cook, so the Supreme Court has basically rejected his attempt to remove Lisa Cook. Now what's the reason? The reason is that the Federal Reserve occupies a unique constitutional and institutional position is what is saying. So the position here is more critical, more important and more powerful than the other bodies, as a result of which exception for the Federal Reserve. Now the members of the Federal Reserve Board can only be removed for a cause, not just like that by the president. Now other key Supreme Court decisions again, so the court ruling again in 5:4 upheld the laws permitting counting of mail-in ballots. What are mail-in ballots? See, some people may not be able to physically be present to come to the election booth and vote, so they can also, in USA there is a provision for you to mail in your vote. It is also for the military personnel etc. to do that. So it upheld the state laws which basically permitted counting of the mail-in ballots as well. What was the reasoning behind that? That the federal law fixes the deadline for casting votes, not necessarily for receipt of ballots. Means the last date of casting of vote is there, but not the last date of receipt. Right, so those two are different things, of course. So what is the implication? States may continue to continue existing postal ballot counting practices. Now, one decision that came against Donald Trump is with respect to John Carroll case. So here, basically, the idea was he was penalized $5 million. Supreme Court basically Donald Trump was penalized $5 million in this particular verdict. Supreme Court upheld that penalty. So Supreme Court refused to hear Donald Trump's appeal against the 2023 civil judgment which was there, as a result of which whatever the earlier jury verdict was there will remain in force. What was the verdict? Verdict was that Donald Trump is liable to pay $5 million in damages to her. So that ruling is going to continue. Now, what's the background of this case? The jury at the time found Donald Trump liable for sexually abusing this writer, that is John Carroll, as a result of which for compensation $5 million was provided, and the Supreme Court refused to hear an appeal against this judgment. So this will still stand and Donald Trump would be required to pay $5 million. So yes, this $5 million case goes against him. Also, there is an exception for the Federal Reserve Bank's governor. The president, USA president, cannot remove, but from other executive body, the Supreme Court has given the power to the president to remove the heads, officials of this body, arguing that it will help in smoother functioning, thus expanding the power of the USA president. Now that will not hold true only for Donald Trump. After Donald Trump, whoever else will come will also have the same power, unless and until a new act is brought in to overturn it, or the 9-judge bench basically again takes a decision which is contrary to what they have done this time. Thank you.